the press conference, last Friday afternoon with Sheriff Spangler, just really talking about the increased number of threats that have been taking place. And I just want families to know that, safety and security of our students and staff are our number one concern. That's what we definitely make a priority for us. Also want to thank our law enforcement partners. We've always known each other well and been good partners with them, but unfortunately in these last several days, we spent a whole lot of time with them working through different things. There are more of those happening right now. As a dad, I just want to say I understand maybe how families are feeling right now. You feel uneasy, you feel anxious, and we understand that. Your students come, 60,000 students come every day to us. The staff, they have spouses and families too. It's important for us. I know I made it a point to be, I was at 3 schools today, just kind of there, talking with staff, talking with principals, some of the schools that had received some of the threats. I have plans to be out at schools again tomorrow morning, as will a lot of my staff. Just trying to see where people are. Schools I was at, obviously people had some concerns and were anxious, but understandable in this time. But for the most part, kids were in class, trying to keep about their regular day. I know one principal, Dr. Adams, and I actually went to go see today that was walking through some extra measures, that parts of their safety plan that exist, that they were going to just put in because of the extra threats today. So we just want to ask again in this. It is disruptive. It's disruptive to our learning cycle. It's extra anxiety on kids and staff that they don't need for the job that they're trying to get done. It is frustrating. I share the same frustration with families that feel like this is frustrating. We hear that. We're frustrated with the situation too. But I will tell you that we are safe. We are executing our plans. Our schools are very safe. And I want to say that in coming days, we've worked with both KPD and Knoxville Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Spangler. They'll have an increased presence with us in the coming days. Feel like our schools are safe, and we'll encourage families to bring their students to school and continue to partner with us. And what I say to parents are things that they can do is continue to talk, as Sheriff Spangler has said as well, to students about just the seriousness of false reports. We're fortunate that these are false reports that are happening, but they're just as disruptive because we treat them all as important and as if they're real. Also, just to monitor your students when you have conversations with them about their social media. A lot of these are coming through social media for us right now, and again, we take all of those serious and we look at those and try to find the origin of that. And most of these investigations, the Sheriff's Department takes those at that point. We've worked with multiple organizations. We've worked with Homeland Security. The Tennessee Highway Patrol has been a big part of the things we've done. The Sheriff's Department, KPD are all there, the DA's office as well, trying to help us end some of these things that are happening. It's very important that we continue to do that. We couldn't do it without them as partners. So we'll continue in coming days to cooperate with them with any parts of the investigation that they need, any new threats. I mean, I'd like to tell you that it was just like a moment in time, but it's not. They continue to come in. We're producing or processing an unusually large amount of those on a daily basis right now. But again, we take them all seriously. We have to make sure that it's happening. So again, I'd say to parents, continue to help us by monitoring your students' social media, reporting what you see and know. And I say that too, that's a great thing about this. We're getting a lot of those reports. So people are trusting that our systems are in place to make this work. And we're taking those serious and making that happen. Increased security in the coming days, and tomorrow we'll be there as well. You'll see that. And our schools are safe. They're safe places to be. They were today, and they will be tomorrow. And we'll be out there too to make sure that that's happening.
What have you been hearing from your teachers as you've been into these schools talking with them? I'm sure there's a level of, you mentioned last week, learning loss that's taking place with this concern as well.
Yeah, I think in talking with them, they're professionals. I think there's some reassurance. Obviously, there's anxiety, when you talk to folks, but there's also a reassurance because we didn't just create plans for whatever happened today. And these school plans are things we take very seriously. Every one of our schools has an individualized school plan. Our teachers are a large part of that. They know what their role is. Those are practices and drills that they do. And so they're ready to get that done. And so I think there is some assurance to know that that plan is there. And I'm gonna say this too about those plans. We're constantly looking over those, looking for new protocols. Just last week, I was on the phone with Dr. Adams at 11 o'clock at night. We were talking through, some other things. They had met with some other vendors, constantly kind of looking for what those best practices could be, but really feeling confident in the plans that we have. So I think, again, obviously concern, anxiety, people want knowledge, people don't want to have to deal with this. But I really appreciate that they're being the adults in the building and really taking care of their kids and making sure that they're safe, and then having them learn as well.
You mentioned some of those precautions and things that you're even looking at. I know metal detectors was something that came up a couple days ago. Is that something that you guys are looking at district-wide, or I know money's always a factor as well?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's money as much. I mean, for us, it's always when we look at, obviously there's a cost to things, but we are constantly looking at new protocols, new things that we learn from that. The technology is getting better, the training is getting better. We talk about things that were 5 years ago that were the right techniques that now no longer are. The evacuate, don't evacuate, all those kinds of things change constantly. So, when it comes to metal detectors, that's always tricky. It always comes up in a time like this, but I would tell you that some of the threats that we're getting, metal detectors would not, that would not be helpful. And also, I think there's a fine line for schools. Schools are supposed to be a welcoming place where students want to be. It's a place that we all have fond memories of and you want to be part of. And we don't want to lose that by institutionalizing schools. If it came to that where we thought the technology was well enough to be able to do that and we could still have schools as a place that was welcoming, I think we would never say no to anything. We'll constantly monitor that and look at it. But at this time, metal detectors have not been that option for us.
Are you guys finding that in most of these cases, these are kids that are just being silly and just goofy, or are these people that have malicious, they're trying to scare people?
Yeah, I'd say, kind of general nature of those things. There are some, obviously, kids that are, and I would say this, laws have changed. The stakes are much higher. We've gotten better at the practice. We now have whole child support teams that intervene faster. I think, all of the systems we've been putting in for the last 3 years are working, and I think that's why we're recognizing and intervening earlier on things. But you also have the technology feature now, right, where there's some of the threats we're getting aren't even from our state, right, aren't even local. But they're naming schools and they have details on things. So you have that cyber piece that's involved in it now that I think is complicating things. You have social media. All of those different platforms are different. Some disappear quickly. Some are there for a prolonged record. So then we need the FBI to help look at some of the things. So there's lots of complications besides probably when we grew up where it was a kid who pulled the fire alarm. It's a more sophisticated series of threats that come now.
Can you clarify, just so far
Sure.
in this past week, 2 arrests for students at halls. Any additional arrests that have been made or that we know of regarding these new threats?
Yeah, I would have to say, just because so many of these are still ongoing investigations, it's probably a better question for the Sheriff's Department as far as, they're the ones who do the charging and the DA as far as pressing the charges when it comes to that. So I don't know that I'd be the right guy to answer that for accuracy. I will say this, though, really do appreciate that Sheriff Spangler has been really strong and come out and said, that there's no place for this, and he's going to be hard on it and push for the charges that he has. We support him in that and appreciate him doing that.
A lot of parents that we spoke with today, they brought up concerns about the protocol, about the process of this. They say they saw these posts circulating last night, messages weren't sent out until this morning. What are your thoughts on that, kind of just the protocol that KCS has to address these threats when they arise?
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident in our protocols. We do always look over those and are always trying to, I always say we reserve the right to get smarter, right? So anytime we can do that, we'll do that. But no, I mean, our number one concern whenever we get one is to make sure things are safe and secure first. Communication comes pretty quick in that too. Communication with the principal, the school, activation of their safety plan if need be, law enforcement involvement. So there's a lot of moving parts that happen in that moment. And there is some ability to be able to kind of look about credibility of things too. Like I said, not everything's coming from local, from a student sitting in a classroom. So some of those things come at different times. With social media, some people may be aware on the outside. Families may be aware, and sometimes we learn from students and families that threat's even out there. So it's hard to say one time that like, hey, we had this and we sat on it, because we're not. We're moving fast to get that done. It may just be they're the first one to see it for different reasons. So we do act quick. Safety is our number one concern for that, and then communication is very important after that.
You touched upon it a little bit. I wanted to ask about that learning curve. This is the social media age. This isn't the 90s anymore where kids are just coming on phones. How much conversations do you have with school districts outside of Knox County, across the state, in trying to monitor these threats as they come, not just in Knox County, but as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a national problem. We're hearing the same things, and we know because some of the things we've been part of involve other schools and other school systems and other states too. So we're just part of that list sometimes when it comes to it. So I think we're all battling the same thing. I mean, what we're kind of hearing is mostly it's that involvement with local law enforcement. Never did I think Secret Service and FBI and Homeland Security would be this involved in all of these things. They are. I mean, talked with them this week and last week. So I think it has gotten very sophisticated, and I think it's the technology that's made that happen. So we're not unique here. We're just one of the larger systems and probably a better target, like for everything else, for some of those.
Sheriff's been outspoken about the penalties that people could face if they're found to be doing this. In terms of from the school standpoint, expulsion, suspension, what's on the table from your guys' end as well?
Yeah, so typically that process for us is, there's new laws that have been passed. The legislators have come out pretty strongly against a lot of these things, and we always follow our model for discipline as far as where that falls out, depending on that. Typically, if there is a criminal investigation, we kind of let that take place so we can kind of see the outcomes of different things. And then, we have student discipline as well, and our policy kind of lays out numbers of days and kind of ranges of days for that. So, it's real important for us, even if a student is suspended, that we get them plugged in and get them back on a track to graduation, because we remember too, these are minors, and they make mistakes, and it impacts a lot of people. But at the same time, our goal is still to graduate every student in Knox County ready to be successful afterwards.
For parents who didn't send their kids to school today or are not planning to send tomorrow, are these excused absences because they might be anxious or?
Yeah, so here I'll say this to families. The students that we serve are your students, and you're the parent of that student, so those choices need to be yours as far as what you're comfortable with as a family. I will tell you, as someone who just had a senior graduate last year, I would send my daughter. I'll be here tomorrow. I'll be in schools tomorrow. I feel really good about that. There's several of my staff members that have their students. They're coming tomorrow. Because we understand when you're in the building, our schools are some of the safest places to be. When you look at all of society and you look at, we have armed officers, we have protocols in place, we have secure front doors, we have all the things that you would think about and a lot of the technologies we won't talk about. Our schools are safer than most other places you can be in Knoxville, so feel very confident about that. Families have that choice to make. We understand that and want to respect that. There are things in our absences policies allow parent notes and things like that that can take place. So, I would say I encourage everyone to bring their students tomorrow. We're going to have school, and we're going to feel good about that, feel good about our safety that's in place, feel good about the increased supports from both the Sheriff's Department and Knoxville Police Department. And I think our schools will be the safest place to be, but we also understand families' feelings on that.
You talked a few weeks ago about digital citizenship. Applying that to this, how are you having conversations in classrooms? How are you advising parents to educate their kids not to make these threats?
Yeah, I'd say two things with that. One is, there are new requirements that computer science and some of those kinds of classes are taken. We do a digital citizenship. We're a one-to-one district. All those are part of the training. It's not something you do in isolation, though. Everything you do in that digital citizenship is going to be around the content of how you're using it in that course. We talked about AI policies, all those things that come out, and all of that is, we now have a content or a context by which to apply those things. And so our teachers are doing that on a constant basis to be able to talk to them about the right ways to do that. As far as parents go, I would say, again, they can be a great help to us. One, talk to your students, even if you think your student's not involved, and how serious these false threats are. Because, again, we've just talked about some of the litigation and some of the charges that can be for your students. It's also important too, social media. Again, as a parent of two daughters myself, you're not always up on all the latest technology, but have those conversations to the extent you can be involved in that. That's very important for us. And then obviously, when in doubt, report. And both students and families, we're getting reports from that too, where some of these are let in. We're okay. This increased number, we built these systems to receive this, and we'd rather hear and maybe potentially over-identify as opposed to not identify and miss something. So they can help us in that way too.
I wanted to ask about just a message to students themselves. These are people in the formidable shapes of their years, their times, 14 to 18-year-olds. What is your message to them to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I would just say to students, decisions you make matter, and how you care about your fellow classmates. Sometimes we said before there may be pranks or gags in the past that are kind of like, this is funny, let's see what we can get by with. But it impacts people, and it doesn't just impact them that day for that school day. It impacts some of their emotional well-being, their anxiety levels, how they feel about school, their trust in an institution they should be able to trust to come to. Again, our teachers and our staff work every day to build those relationships and do that. And something like this comes in and adds fear, and it compromises that. So, your actions do have consequences, and think through that for yourself, but also for your fellow classmates.
And I know you mentioned an increased presence tomorrow. Was there any Are there been any reports of any threats that have been planned for tomorrow? Is that why, or is it just an increased presence overall?
I would just say, yeah, we've seen the increase in this kind of period of time. There's not one moment in time on one day that we've kind of had this barrage of them. As the sheriff, alluded to on last Friday, there's just an increased number across the board right now. And again, some of that may be people are aware and reporting. Some of those may be external things that are happening, but we're processing those each individually as they come through. And I said before, we've been having multiple every day for the last couple of days, so we'll continue to process those. And typically this cycle will go for a little while longer, and that's why we're calling on parents and students to do the right thing so we can get back to normal.
I have one final question for you.
Sure.
This may be a question for the school culture department, but you've talked about early interventions. What are those kind of early signs to watch out for, and what do those interventions look like?
You're right. Janice Cook is the expert in that area, but I'll try to help her a little bit on this. The things she's taught me. So every school has a whole child support team, and so that's a team made up of administrators, counselors, teachers that all come around, and they're kind of doing a hot list of students based on academics, but also based on just what they're seeing in a student and what their knowledge of that student is. It could be anything from the students their family's going through a divorce. It could be they've recently moved. I mean, these are the kind of factors they look for. They talk about behaviors that the student may be showing. They talk about their academic performance, and then they actually build out individualized plans for those students and start the intervention. Again, it could be time with a counselor. It could be some additional services that they need. So that's a great early warning for us to be able to start seeing kids that maybe their behavior is just not what we'd expect it to be. We can find some things through there. And so those kinds of interventions are important for us. Our counselors are very involved with them as well. And we want to always make sure, and I'm going to send that message to parents too, if your child is struggling with those things, we have the resource to be able to help. Just reach out to your school's administration and let us know you need that extra support.
Thank you, guys.
Good? All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming out on what is today?